when I went for my first job, reading the job description, I thought this is going to be very transformative. And I had all these scenarios in my head, probably first day going to impress the CEO, first day going to get like a double promotion, going to have some transformative impact in the business. But 1 month, 2 months, 6 months, the truth was very, very far from what was written in the job description. It became very monotonous, very mundane. And there were several points where I kept questioning, what am I doing here, right? How does this make any sense?
So frustration was starting to set in?
First 1 month I understood. I was like, yes, it involves a lot of grunt work. I'm not complaining about the grunt work. But when I checked in people who've been in this particular role for 10 months, 11 months, and they're still doing the same thing, I was like, okay, there is no light at the end of this tunnel. So that's when it became really frustrating. So I felt really unheard. I felt unheard and undervalued. And I was questioning myself. I was like, because my educational background is in economics and journalism. So I was kept questioning myself because I was like, what is this special skill sets that you saw in my profile that you wanted me in? And then I'm doing copy paste. And I was like, what is this? So I was very, very frustrated and demotivated.
Welcome to the first 2 years. I am Akshaya Chandrasekaran. This week we are talking to a listener who has a problem that I used to think cannot be solved. And that is your first job having way too much grunt work. The reason I think so is because this has perennially been a problem and something that is usually relegated to it is what it is. But the reason this intrigued me is because of it happening right now. These complaints have not slowed at all in a bad economy. Almost all entries that have come in from listeners has a mention of this in one way or the other. When one might think any job, including one that requires some gruntage, is better than none. But that's really not the case. As our listener this week knows quite well, for many who are starting out in their careers, this is something that is standing in the way of achieving their dreams. Meet Matthew Jacob. He is 26 years old, and his first job, he recalls it as being a complete nightmare.
I was working in the public relations industry, and my client was a large e-commerce company.
And what was the grunt work, like air quotes, grunt work in this job, right?
In the job description, my job included, media strategy, try to understand how we can enhance the image of this particular client. But in reality, my job included mostly tracking that particular company's leadership and their social media handles, seeing how many likes they had, how many comments they had, and then filling it out on an Excel spreadsheet. Yeah, filling it out in an Excel spreadsheet on a daily basis, saying, for example, 24 June, so and so person got four likes, 3 comments. 26 June, same thing. So that used to take a lot of time because it was very mundane, very repetitive, extremely boring. Another part was because it was a large e-commerce company, they used to have a lot of media engagements. So another part of my job was to copy paste media coverage from newspapers into an Excel spreadsheet that my client used to or wanted to maintain, right? So I should just maintain copy photos of newspaper clippings where my company's name appeared and just copy paste it in an Excel sheet. It used to take 3-4 hours a day. It's crazy.
Matthew spent 6 months in this job and he had absolutely reached his limits.
After a point, all this copy paste and everything, you become reasonably good at it, and then boredom sets in, right? Because it's not intellectually stimulating. You just switch off. You can do autopilot mode. So at that point of time, boredom was killing me, and I was working from home. So boredom, work from home, seeing your friends have like these amazing careers, it just pushed me to exit the company.
Oh my God. I think we can all relate to this to some degree. There are these times when you can pull yourself together and power through, hoping you will eventually find jackpot. And then there are times when you absolutely feel like you've reached your limit with the monotony and mundaneness of work and want to quit. I wanted to find out if there was any other way. So, on today's episode, how to steal back your time spent in grunt work. Can we help people who might be in Matthew's position to figure out how to find meaning in their first job? When we come back, we'll talk to 2 people who have been there and done that. Sairam Krishnan, Head of Marketing at Atomicwork, and Shresth Tandon, Director of Operations at MediaNet. Both went through the same exact ordeal and came out with a unique understanding of how to make the grunt work matter. When I started working on this episode, I was curious to know where this phrase grunt work came from. And according to a possibly dubious entry on Wikipedia, the phrase grunt work originates from Vietnam War era, where soldiers were sometimes referred to as grunts due to the sound of their boots hitting the ground as they marched. The term was used somewhat derogatorily to describe these soldiers who were often involved in the most physically demanding and dangerous tasks. And in a different context, grunt can also refer to a low level worker or laborer in various industries. Okay, back to what we were discussing Matthew and how he quit because of all the mindless work he had to do. You mentioned feeling unseen and unheard, right? So I was wondering if you actually approached your manager asking if there is anything else you can do at the company besides just copy paste, right? Like, did you ever try approaching?
The funny part is, in that 5.5 months that I had three managers. So my managers were more frustrated than I were. Right? Because even at their level, they were doing copy paste. So they were just supervising whether I did the copy paste right. And there's a limit to how much they could do it, right? So in 5.5 months, I had three managers. However, every time I went with a suggestion, right, and a lot of those things that we were doing could have been automated, right? It could have been done way more efficiently. So every time I used to go with some sort of suggestions, I was like, why don't we automate this? Is this really required? Right? Often the response was, this is the way things are. You will figure it out. This is what the client wants. Let's just give it to the way they want it. So nobody really wanted to break the status quo. Nobody really wanted to see how can we do this efficiently in a new way. Nobody wanted to take that risk. They just wanted to keep that wagon pushed forward, right? So not only did I not have a manager to actually go and open up because every 3-4 weeks I had a new manager in place. Whenever I did, I was just being told, this is the way it is. This is how it is here.
Remember when I described to you the etymology of the phrase grunt work? About how it was considered lowly and menial in the Vietnam War and all of that? Sairam Krishnan, head of marketing at Atomicwork, believes the way we look at this work and the terminology we use is where the problem begins. He thinks there's a better way to define what we do at work when we start out than this. I wanted to talk to you because you write a newsletter and you talk about careers a lot in that newsletter. It's called the CMOjournal.com. And you had specifically written about the 10 things I learned in 12 years of work. And I remembered you had written, it takes time to get good at anything. You have to give yourself 2 years at a minimum to understand what the hell is going on around you. Then another 2 to master the craft and another year to understand how you want to play the game. That's all of the 2 years my audience have, right? Like you're essentially saying, spend all the 2 years to just figure out. So I can't imagine going back and telling someone who's asked me, how do I break out of this monotony? Like, this is it. This is how it's going to be for the next 2 years. So I wanted to know why you wrote what you wrote and what would you say to this person?
There are ways to break this down, right? I also came to a job. My first job was at Freshworks back in 2011. And I came to, a startup thinking that, oh my God, I'm going to do like brand work and this is what I'm going to do. And these are my aspirations in terms of like, I'm going to create this new brand, startup brand out of nowhere and all of that. And then the first thing I was handed was like I was given a bunch of blog posts and like knowledge base articles to do, which I immediately did, right? And you always have this reaction. I had this reaction too at that point of time. But and this is where I need to break this down in terms of like learnings that I've had, like now over a decade of working in startups. A lot of what juniors think is mundane and monotonous work is actually the basic that makes the marketing function. And that could mean in product also, that could be the same in like engineering as well, in a lot of different ways. So basically a lot of what we think from the outside, and sometimes even as we're doing it as monotonous work, is also maintenance. In a lot of ways, like when you're building a bridge, it's when you build a bridge and you don't just go home, right? There's like people have to come and like take a look at it every 2 weeks. Like things are fine, especially the first few months after the bridge has been built. You need to take a look at what is happening. Are there cracks? Like how do we like fix this and all of that? That's also what has to happen in like a work context, which people don't realize. And when, for example, when you have a junior person just entering the workforce, that's a great way for them to learn the ropes of this particular part of work itself. and it makes them learn so much more of what they're going to build in the future. So, firstly, monotonous work is not like it may look to you like it's monotonous, but it's actually foundational work. So that's the first part of it. The second part of it is actually that in a lot of functions, we don't now have what we used to call the apprentice. Close to where I'm from in Mahabalipuram, like they build, they build statues, which like sometimes go for like thousands of like rupees and like sometimes lakhs of rupees, and there is usually a master craftsman and there is an apprentice. And the apprentice most of the time sits there and mostly just watches. They're not when like a really big and important statue order comes along, they're not going to go get their hands dirty, even though they may be really talented. Every job has a surprising amount of detail. This particular way of looking at work has been lost.
Interesting that you use the word apprentice, because one of the things people said were also that I'm an employee getting the intern treatment, alluding to, of course, like how underutilized in some places interns are and like overexploited in others and all of that, right? But you're saying develop an apprentice mindset. So I'm not sure like how this will go with, you know.
I mean, the depth of knowledge work these days, Akshaya, is dramatic. I think that's the only answer to that question. But if you are a junior and you've just come into this role and try to hit one really big swing, try to take a really big swing, you will most probably embarrass yourself because you don't know the depth of what is required. You don't know the politics of the situation. You don't know who's trying to do what in the org. Who are your allies? Who you're not. You don't know any of this. And you're trying to just say everybody wants to do good work. The assumption is wrong. Everybody wants to do good work, yes, but everybody also wants to advance their careers, advance the particular project that they're working on, try to move the needle towards another particular thing that they, want to do, get headcount. You don't know any of this. So if you try to go and do this as a junior, you'll struggle. But however, when you have like 4 or 5 years experience under your belt, you'll have way better, you'll do a way better job of navigating these. And therefore, again, like coming back to this, the idea of like getting handed something in which you're given time to sort of absorb all of this is a privilege, and people should absolutely take it.
Did you say 4 to 5 years? I need to hustle for 4 to 5 years to do good work. So, what am I to do in the first two?
Your job is to shut up and do the job that's required of you and learn and absorb as much as you can. Ask a bunch of questions, because you've earned that right. Like you're sitting in this org where people have given you a job. You've earned the right to ask questions.
That's harsh. You're saying don't talk at all. Yeah.
No, it's like when I say don't talk, like, obviously, like it's like,
Yeah,
it's
I know what you mean. Yeah.
yeah, it's marketing speak. But what I'm trying to say is that your job is to absorb as much as you can. Your job is to listen. Your job is to, imbibe. It's osmosis almost. You stay there, you understand a lot of what is going on around you, and each one of these things will help you in your job, help you in your career at some point of time. Your career is 25, 30, 35 years long.
Yeah.
If you're going to go in your first 2 years thinking, I will do this job or I will not do any job, I think it's like, fundamentally self-defeating.
All tasks have a larger purpose, no matter how boring or repetitive a task you are assigned to might be. Grunting now will become a means to understand the ins and outs of your job better. I understand all of that, but if you're wondering, like me, at what point can I hope to break out of this pattern and have bigger aspirations for my career? Coming up after the break. Shresth Tandon is Director of Operations at MediaNet. He is someone who's walked the same path and made all of the same mistakes. Year on year, he also recruits from top P schools in the country and sees it play out firsthand.
So I completed my MBA and joined a large conglomerate. Gleam in our eyes, thinking, wow, we are going to change India, one of India's largest companies. Fresh blood going into the company. So you go into that feeling, this is it. I'm going to change the world. And then it slowly starts to sink in. Okay, this is not as fast as I expected. Things are slow. People take time to get back when you ask them something. You're like, okay, maybe it'll change. Maybe when I get my first individual project, it will be very different. And then you start getting some work, and you're like, okay, maybe, this is just the start. Maybe I'll get something better. And then, a couple of months pass, a couple of more months pass, and you're like, is this it? I mean, is this what I'll be doing permanently? And that feeling of doing mundane grunt work, which you may or may not see value in, is a very, very real feeling that I certainly feel a lot of us get in our first jobs.
Exactly, right? So you know what I'm talking about. So do you have people in your team coming and complaining to you about this, and how do you generally respond?
Oh, yes, of course.
Okay.
I think as a manager, it's a great sign that the team is coming to you with what they really feel, because that does definitely means that, they're comfortable talking to you. The first thing that I definitely do is to make them aware of what exactly is the value of it. When you are doing those tasks, your visibility is not up to a level that, will give you that understanding of where and how is your work being used. So it's very important as a manager for me to tell them that, because you are making, for example, one of my teams makes a particular dashboard.
Yeah.
It's very important for them to know what exactly is being done with that dashboard. And it does not mean giving them, high level answers of, we will use it for sales growth, or we will use it for profit growth or something. It is giving them specifics that, do you realize that last week we did this exchange, and this was done because of the data that you gave, and that is why we need this particular set of data and data similar to that.
Got it.
It's very important for them to realize what they're doing.
So is it that when people come with these concerns, that's when it spurs the line of thinking as to, oh, what can we give this person? Or do you just let them continue down that path and eventually reward them with something interesting? Like which one usually happens?
I do not believe that there is a correct answer between them. However, my personal opinion has been, do the former. Do what you're being
Complain?
asked to do. Don't slack in it. But if you are not liking it, please go to your manager and, at least let them know that you're not enjoying it. Either of two things will happen. Either, they will actually give you a new work, or, they will ideally express their inability to say that, I'm sorry, this is all I have.
Yeah.
You will get an answer. I don't think so. It's, advisable to live in perpetual hope.
Okay, then I'll put you on the spot and ask, right? If I have to approach my manager, then what are some do's and don'ts? Actually, I'm more interested in the don'ts because there are so many ways in which this could go wrong.
Never slack in what you're being asked to do, even though it is very boring. The don't would be go aimlessly and say, I don't want to do this, but I don't know what I want to do. Just move me somewhere. Another don't would be, don't start doing the job worse, thinking that you will not get it again. I have heard it from a lot of people. I, in fact, got this advice during a couple of my tenures that if you're not liking it, please don't do it well. Because if you do it well, you will get more of it.
Are you serious?
Of course, a lot of people would come and tell you, because, that's the first thing that comes to you that, oh, you don't like it, like your peers and some people, you don't like it. I would really suggest that, you don't really do well at it because,
Then you'll be stuck in this
you'll
job
stuck
because
in
you're
it.
doing well at
Yeah,
it.
manager would be like, hey, you did it so well, I cannot move you elsewhere. I would highly recommend against having this attitude that, if I don't do it well, I will get out of it. You don't.
Well, I can understand where they're coming from, right? Like, it's like rebelling against what's being offered. Like, you're not accepting your destiny of sorts. So you're like, I'm going to slack, not do a good job of it because I refuse to accept that this is my destiny.
Rebellion in corporate life, you cannot rebel by, spoiling things for irrespective of the team or person you are working for.
Yeah.
Not only will you burn your bridges, you will also ensure that, nobody trusts you.
Right. Any other strict no while making a case for yourself to get more interesting work?
You can take examples of something that you have delivered, but don't take examples of something that you have, and just because of that you deserve that. For example,
So basic, yeah.
yeah,
Sorry.
you have people from premium colleges come and say that I do not think I should be doing grunt work, manual work, reporting because I am a pass out of XYZ. This
Huh.
is an extremely wrong statement according to me, because you being a XYZ student, an alumni, has nothing to do with the fact that you are not made for the grunt work. You being better suited to do a job in a different team because you add value to that is a better spiel rather than I'm an alumni of XYZ.
Yeah, I can see why that looks like a red flag. No, it's giving entitled because you're essentially saying I'm above this. I am from XYZ college, so I'm above this.
As someone who's spoken to people and has heard this, it definitely sounds and feels a lot of entitlement that I feel you should absolutely avoid at any stage.
Yeah, but how do you perceive someone who comes and tells you that they're unhappy with their job, right? Currently, do you feel like, wow, this person is already complaining about their job? Or like, what signal are you getting from this person, right? Even like, does it create a negative perception? Even if I'm not being entitled and just expressing my concern, it could create that negative perception, right?
I have not perceived it negatively if somebody in my team who's been performing well comes and says this to me, because I have that level of confidence in that team member, that okay, fine, if this person is able to deliver this well and is still not enjoying it, there needs to be something done so that the full potential of this individual is explored, or at least him or her is at least given something that they enjoy. I get I truly get the feeling that it would seem like I'm complaining a lot, I'm being difficult, but it would ideally seem so only when you are not doing what is being asked of you properly.
Yeah, delivering where you are. Okay, what do you think about this? When you're stuck in boring tasks or like mundane work, whatever you want to call it, some work that you personally don't find meaningful, right? Is it okay for me to go and ask my manager if I get this task done well? Not just done, if I get this task done well, will I get to do something bigger in terms of my aspiration? Like, because just the idea of asking this and having them assure me that there is something will help me power through where I'm at right now, right? Like, or is this sounding like too much of a
I
barter?
feel it should work. I have done that, and my team also regularly does that when they say that, okay, fine, we will do this, but, what is it, that will happen? And, where is it that this can take me? I don't think so. There is any, there should be any hesitation in asking that. It will give you more purpose and clarity as you
Okay.
get to know why you are doing that, and it will also give you a sense of purpose that okay, fine, if I do this, I can actually end up
Okay.
doing the next task as well.
Like when you're amid this daily scrum and like you're sort of wading through these tedious work, so to call it, and perhaps working with less than inspirational managers who are not yet able to help you, there's a lot of emotion, right? Pent up frustration, like, which is also the reason why the mishaps that you were saying, like people just say I'm from this college and I'm being made to
True.
do this, I'm from this, like there's a lot of emotional reckoning that's also happening in your first job, right?
Yes.
Like
Yes.
so that it's not easy to, like, whatever we are talking about, I just wanted to like acknowledge that it's not easy to rise calmly about all of this and remind yourself that you can do this and this and this.
Absolutely not. I feel it's what we've spoken about is much more easier to say than it is in practice, especially when you are in your first job. and you've been impacted by this reality hitting you like a stone, that oh my god, what has happened. Yes, it is very emotional, it is very, very difficult. There are two things that are going to happen. You will always be self-doubting. The questions that you asked, will it look bad? How will my manager perceive? Will I start looking like a rebel? Will I start looking like a problematic manager? Or you become too agitated, wherein you are like, I just don't want to do this, I will throw a fit, I will do it badly so that I never get it, I just want to get out of it. Yes, all of it is absolutely true. I've made those mistakes and I've moved forward, and I'm realized, what, I should not have done it.
Sometimes I just blame LinkedIn for all of this. Every time you scroll, someone has gotten promoted, someone somewhere has become 30 under 30 in your first job, and you have no frame of reference. And then your friends and batchmates just become your benchmark, right? So it's even more harder to do.
Exactly. So I completely empathize and agree. This is going to happen. It is tough. It is not easy.
Thank you so much for listening. You can write to me with feedback at aksha@the-ken.com. The First 2 Years is produced from the newsroom of The Ken, India's first subscribers-only business news platform. This episode was written and hosted by me, Akshaya Chandrasekaran, produced by Anushka Mukherjee, and audio engineering by Rajiv CN. Thank you for tuning in.